This morning, it is my privilege to share with you further out of the Word of the Lord, and I want to share with you our next session on David, our next sermon on David. Now, last week, I shared with you what happens when somebody who is a man after God's own heart becomes king. What does he do? What is first and foremost in his heart? And we saw that David, he brought the ark of God. He brought back the presence of the Lord. Now, one thing that you could always see in David's life that we shared last week is that David inquired of the Lord. He asked of the Lord. Sometimes he got it right, and sometimes he got it wrong. But he inquired of God, and he asked God, what should I do? And after this, we see that David then, he thought, man, it's now so wonderful to have the presence of God with us. I know God is with me. I know God anointed me. We've got the ark back. It's wonderful. And he set up a choir that you cannot imagine. You can go read this in Chronicles. It's amazing the amount of worship that David set up around the tabernacle. It's absolutely something to be behold. You can go read that. As I said, I don't have time to share every single thing on David's life. But David, he made a choir and an orchestra, and he said, let's make sure that 24/7 God is being praised. Let's make sure that there's not even a moment where our God is not being glorified and honored. And he did that. And then he said, man, I think the next thing we should do, in 2 Samuel chapter 7, he said, the next thing we should do, I think we should build God a house. That would be the good thing to do next. And he actually called Nathan, which was a prophet in David's time. It says in verse 1 of chapter 7, it says, after King David settled in his palace, the Lord had given him rest from all his enemies around him. He said to Nathan the prophet, here I am living in a house of cedar while the ark of God remains in a tent. And Nathan replied to the king, whatever you have in mind, go ahead and do it, for the Lord is with you. But that night the word of the Lord came to Nathan, saying, go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord says. Are you the one to build the house to dwell in? I have not dwelled in a house from the day I brought you out of Egypt. To this day I've been moving from place to place with a tent as my dwelling. Wherever I've moved with all the Israelites, did I ever say to any of the rulers whom I'm commanded to shepherd my people, why have you not built me a house of cedar? So God said to David, I'm not asking a house. That's not what I'm asking. David, I didn't ask this of you. I didn't ask this of anybody else. I moved with you guys in a tent. I moved with my people. And God said, David, I'm actually, let me tell you what I want to do. He said, David, don't build me a house. He did say to David, and you can go read that. He did say to David, I'll raise one of your sons to build me a house. I'll raise your offspring, and they will build me a house. But David, he said, I want to build you a house. I want to read this to you. If you read with me there, the Lord declares to you, this is let me read to you from verse 11. And I've done ever since that time, I appointed leaders over my people. I will also give you rest from all your enemies. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. The second part of verse 11, God says, David, don't build me a house. That's not what I want you to do now. I will build a house. I will establish your house, your household. I know you think you know, and I honor you for that, David, but I want you just be a king for me. Be a king for me, and I will show you what I can do through a king that is surrendered to me. I will establish you. I will establish your household. I will do things around you that you have not seen before. God said, David, allow me. Allow me. So then we read in the very next passage, and this is where I want to spend a little bit of time, in chapter 8. Last week I spent some time at the end on David's thanksgiving after God said this to him. But then we read that David had a lot of battles. There was a lot of enemies around David. And because in the time of Saul, when God gave Israel a king because they wanted a king, and they didn't just want the prophets to say to them what God wants and then do it. No, they wanted a king, like all the other nations, and God gave them a king in Saul. And we know what the outcome of that was. But in that time, all of Israel's enemies would draw up against them, and they would, one by one, they would come and they would plunder this part, and they would subdue this part of Israel. And then they would come on this side, and the Amorites and the Ammonites and the Philistines, all of them would come, and they would just take a piece. And they would subdue parts of Israel. And then Israel would be able to, Saul would drive them off here, and then this would happen. And then that will happen, and then this will happen. And wherever they went, whatever victory they had on this side, just a little while, and they were defeated again. God said to David, no, don't build me a house. Let me show you. Now in chapter 8, it says this: in the course of time, David defeated the Philistines. He subdued them, and he took Methek and Ammon from the control of the Philistines. So he started taking back what the enemy stole. David also defeated the Moabites. He made them lie down on the ground and measured them off with a length of cord. Every 2 lengths of them he would put to death, and the 3rd length he would allow to live. So the Moabites became subject to David and brought him tribute. He took back what was stolen. But not only that, with the Moabites, when he defeated them, he made them subject to Israel. So the exact opposite to what happened to Israel in the time of Saul, even though God was with Saul, because Saul's heart was not consecrated continuously to God. There was always these pieces that was taken off, and people running off with what belonged to Israel, subduing Israel. Now we see the exact opposite. The Philistines fell when David drew up against them. The Moabites were defeated. They started serving Israel. Moreover, David defeated Hadadezer, son of Roab, of Zoban. When he went to restore his monument at the Euphrates River, David captured 1,000 of his chariots. And when he captured them, he even took these horses and he maimed all of his horses. David defeated them, and he made them servants of them. When the Arameans heard what happened from Damascus, when they heard and they tried to come, in verse 5, they tried to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah. David struck down 22,000 of them. He put garrisons in the Aramean kingdom of Damascus, and the Arameans became subject to him and brought tribute. So not only did he take back, he now subdued Moabites. He now subdued the Arameans. But listen to what the last part of verse 6 says. It says, the Lord gave David victory wherever he went. David took the gold shields that belonged to the officers of Hadadezer, verse 7, from Tebah and Berokim towns, and that belonged to Hadadezer, king of David. King David took a great quantity of bronze. When Thou, king of Hamath, heard that, when Tau, king of Hamath, heard that David had defeated the entire army of Hadadezer, he sent his son Joram to King David to greet him and congratulate him on his victory in battle over Hadadezer, who had been in war with Tau. Joram brought with him articles of silver, of gold and bronze. Verse 11, King David dedicated these articles to the Lord, as he had done with the silver and gold from all the nations he subdued. David subdued all the nations around him. He took back their own ground, and then he took back even more ground. He took some more territory, and he subdued everyone around him. And twice it says here that wherever David went, again it says in verse 14, it says that the Lord gave David victory wherever he went. Because David inquired of God. God said, David, give me the opportunity. You want to build me a house. Let me show you what I do when I build a house. Saul got up early in the morning to wage war. He went to sleep late at night. He spent a lot of time on the battlefields. But he was systematically stripped from his possessions, from his authority, from the things that belong to the people of God. God said, David, if you keep your heart focused on me, if you allow me to take that same shepherd boy that I made a giant slayer, I will show you the kind of house that I can establish. Psalm 127 says, you can get up early if you want and go to sleep late, but it is of no use unless God builds the house. But if God builds the house, your territory would be returned. If God builds the house, those that come against you will not only not have victory, but you'll gain victory. Can that be? I'm reading it to you. So victory after victory happened. But this is the part that actually blessed me the most. Just after the last part of chapter 8, it speaks about David's officials. And this started to make me think. You know, not only was it territory that was returned and enemies that were subdued, but listen to this. David reigned over Israel doing what was just. This is verse 15 of chapter 8. And right for all his people. Let me read that verse again. David reigned over Israel doing what was just and right for all his people. Joab, son of Zeruiah, was over the army. Joshaphat, son of Ahilub, was recorded. Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Amalek, son of Abiathar, were priests. Zeruiah was a secretary. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over the Kerizzites and Perizzites, and David's sons were priests. You see, the thing is, if God establishes you, if God says, I'm going to build your household, I'll establish your household. Not only within you, David, around you. You will start seeing things you never thought possible. Now quickly just think back with me. Where did we really get to meet David? First time moving into his dad's house. I mean, do you have another son? Yes. Yeah. I thought, but there's a little one that, there's one that looks after the sheep. He's a shepherd. Yeah, bring him. Okay, it's him. Second time we read of David, he was doing some catering. A shepherd, catering, taking his brothers some food. Second time, God took the shepherd that he anointed as king and made him a giant slayer. But the thing we miss is when Goliath was defeated, David did not stop the battle. When God defeated the enemy's mightiest warrior by the hands of a shepherd boy, the shepherd boy with the giant's sword chopped off his head and went after the giant's brothers. Go read it. It says, and the whole of Israel's armies followed David, and they had a great victory that day. They chased the Philistines off, even in the time of King Saul. But now we see that David, victory after victory. What happened to David? The only thing you really need to know in this time of warfare over David is this, that wherever David went, God gave him victory. Now the same thing that happened with the armies. When David arrived in the valley of Elah and saw Goliath standing there, what happened to the armies? The armies were all terrified. They were afraid. They didn't want to move. The whole of the army was there. It's one giant, and they're all standing here. Goliath standing there, and they're all terrified of it. And David said, I'll go. And the moment the giant was defeated, courage returned, not only in David, but in the army of God. What do you think happened when war after war, battle after battle, God showed that I'm with David? Wherever he goes, there will be victory. Wherever David moves, I will give you victory. And David returned things that were stolen. David subdued people that the Israelites were subdued to and subjected to for so many years. And in the hearts of people, something happened. Even before David was anointed as king, it says that there were some thieves and robbers that went to David and said, David, we will fight with you. Some people that were thrown out. Some people that were on the margins said, David, we see something happening here. We might have been thieves before. We might have been robbers before. But if you fight, David, we'll fight. If you want to stand, we'll stand with you. And bad men started becoming good men. Thieves became soldiers. It didn't take an army to raise an army. It took a shepherd boy believing that what God said would happen will happen. David, you can't go up against Goliath. No, you don't understand. It's not Goliath and me. It's Goliath and God. He's going to lose. He's going to lose. You come to me with a spear and a sword. I come to you in the name of the Lord, the Almighty, the God of Israel. And men started believing. It really grabbed my heart so much that I read a little further. Oh man, I love the Word of God. You know what happened around David? Now, I've got to skip a few chapters. We'll come back. We'll come back next week. But I'll skip a few chapters to show you what happened with men around David. With a people that spend some time with him. In 2 Samuel chapter 23, read with me from verse 8. The heading there says, David's mighty men. Now it's only described after David gave his last words. But you must remember, these guys were guys fighting with David. Listen to this. These are the names of David's mighty warriors. 2 Samuel 23, verse 8. These are the names of David's mighty warriors. Joseph Bashabeth. Man, what a name. Say, who are you? I'm Joseph Bashabeth. Man, I'll be afraid already. And then it's not finished. He says, who are you? I'm Joseph Bashabeth. I'm a Tachamonite. But that was not his credentials. He said, I'm Joseph Bashabeth. I'm a Tachamonite, but I'm one of the three. Well, what do you mean one of the three? Let me read to you. He was one of the three. Joseph Bashabeth, a Tachamonite, was chief of the three. He raised his spear against 800 men, whom he killed in one encounter. Have you ever heard a sermon on Joseph Bashabeth? Well, let me tell you, I think he needs a sermon. 800 men in one encounter. Next to him, who was standing next to Joseph Bashabeth, the Tachamonite? Eleazar. Listen to this. Eleazar, son of Dudai. Not Dudai, Dudai. He was an Ahohite. As one of the three, and here's it again. He's one of the three. As one of the three mighty warriors, he was with David when they taunted the Philistines and gathered at Pasdamim for battle. Not only do they draw up in battle, if they see an army, him and David, they taunted the enemy. Then the Israelites retreated, but Eleazar stood his ground and he struck down the Philistines till his hand grew so tired and froze to the sword. The Lord brought about a great victory that day. The troops returned to Eleazar, but only to strip the dead. If you send Eleazar into battle with David, you're going to get two things. He's going to taunt the enemy, number one. Number two, when he starts the battle, he's not going to stop. He's going to fight so much that the sword will fuse to his hand and he will not be able to move the sword from his hand. And he will kill so many men that when the army comes, they've been a little bit late. Eleazar, how did it go? No good. Is there anyone alive? No, you can just strip just take the stuff. That's Eleazar. Man, if people spoke in Israel about the three, there was some, makes me think of Mufasa. Yeah, be careful. Hey, who are you? Hey, he's one of the three. Eleazar, Joseph, Bakabeth. It stays funny. Next to him was Shammah. Shammah, son of Agi, the Herorite. When the Philistines banded together at a place where there was a field full of lentils, Israel's troops fled from them. Wait a minute. We're talking about one of the three. One of the three. And the Israelites were there. And then what? The Philistines were there. And then, am I reading it right? It says, Israel's troops fled from them. Verse 12. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the field. The army is running away. Then you get the memo. They left. They gone home. The Philistines are still on the way. Shammah said, this battle is not against me and them. I saw somebody defeat a giant once. You see, they don't come against me. This lentil field belongs to my king. And he belongs to the king. And Shammah stood. Listen to verse 12. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the field. He defended it. Against what? Against an army. This field is not yours. We are an army. You are one. Yeah, but the field is not yours. He defended it and he struck the Philistines down. The Lord brought about a great victory by the hands of one man, Shammah. All three of them. Can I call them giant slayers? Can I call them soldiers amongst soldiers? Or should we just call them, as the word says, one of the three? There were three men around David that believed that nothing was impossible. But the three of them did not believe that nothing was impossible at the valley of Elah. The three of them were scared with the rest. But when one man says, God is with us, let me show you. When one person says, wait a minute, why are we running? Where are we going? We're running away from the Philistines. Are you crazy? God is with us. Let's run. No, this field belongs to King David. Yeah, but there's an army. Doesn't matter. If you think they're crazy alone, these boys get together, you've got some trouble. During harvest time, verse 13, 3 of the 30 chief warriors went down to David at the cave of Adullam, while a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. At that time, David was in a stronghold, and the Philistine garrisons was at Bethlehem. So they were in Bethlehem. They took control of Bethlehem, and David, they were in their stronghold outside. And David said this. He was just thinking aloud. David said, oh, I long for the water. David longed for water, and he said, oh, that someone would get me a drink of water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem. So the 3 mighty warriors, they must have heard David. Hey, Joseph Bagabet, did you hear what he just said? What did he say? He said he's thirsty. Yeah, but we got water. There's water. Yeah, but he said, he just said it would be nice if he had water from Bethlehem. Yeah, but the Philistines are in Bethlehem. Yeah, but he said it would be nice if he could drink from the well in Bethlehem. Shammah, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Joseph Bagabeth, I am thinking the same as you think. Eliezer, are you in? I've got nothing else to do. And they go into the enemy's camp. To do what? To slay 800 more men. To defend the lentil field or something that belongs. No. They just go to get some water for David. The king wants this water. And then take it back to David. It's the afternoon of just, let's do this. We surprise David with the water that he wants. These boys, they were not only giant slayers. They did not act or react to anything that the natural told them was impossible. They did not believe their own eyes. There's an army. No. You know what we see? We see an opportunity to give David some water. He's going to be so happy. They got him some water. Now David had to be careful. See, if you follow the Lord boldly, you've got to be careful what you say. Because the ones that live with you and they watch you, they become bold. Oh, God says this, then this is what we'll do. You can't just say, I'm thirsty. If you're thirsty, they're going to go get the water. David would never, for water for himself, put them in danger, but they thought it would be a good thing. Then they brought it to David. Listen to this. So the three mighty warriors broke through the Philistine line, drew water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem, carried it back to David, but he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before the Lord. Listen to what David said. Far be it from me, Lord, to do this, he said. Is it not the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives, and David would not drink it? Such were the exploits of the three mighty warriors. This is what these men did. David said, Lord, I can't drink this. They're so bold. I just thought out loud, and then they went and got some water. They could have been killed. And David said, I can't drink it. He threw it out. And then the whole chapter goes on. Abishai, verse 18, the brother of Joab, son of Zerubbabel, the chief of the three. Do you want to tell me? These three, there was somebody that was the chief of the three. Yes, that was Abishai. Listen to him. He raised his spear against 300 men whom he killed, and so he became as famous as the three. Was he not held in great honor than the three? He became their commander, even though he wasn't included among them. You can't just kill 300 men if you want to be part of the three. There'll be 800. Now you see, the thing that I want to show you here is wherever David went, whatever David did, the men around him saw. If you're king and you're hiding on the hill because there's a giant shouting in the valley, the men will follow. They will hide in the shadows. They will see Goliath come out every day and they will tremble in fear. But if there's only one, it's all that's needed. One that says, no, this is not right. I believe what God says. I'll move with what God says. If God says, no, this cannot happen, then this cannot happen. And if one person moves, there's something that happens. If he can do it, he's one. He killed that giant. I mean, there's a lot of us. Let's move with. If he's the king and he moves and God is with him, wherever David went, God was with him. They went with David. They saw. He defeated the Philistines. He took back the ground that was owed to us. He subdued the ones that subdued us. Look at what God is doing. It's not us, it's God. It's not our hand, it's God's hand. It's not about 1 or 800, it's about God. It's about who we serve. It's about the house that God establishes. It's about the house that God builds. Let me read it to you. Let's step a little bit out of David as we slowly bring this to a close. Psalm 127. Psalm 127 says this: unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards that stand watch in vain. In vain that you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat. For he grants sleep to those he loves. And the very next verse: children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward for him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is a man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with their opponents in court. Let me share with you, your children are arrows in your home. Your children are little warriors walking alongside you. Let me ask you, are you sitting watching your giants in the valley of Elah, cowering in fear on the side? Or are you moving forward and saying, this is what God said. If God said it, it will be. What do the men around you see? What do the little girl, what do your children see? What do we show those around us? Are we hiding? Piet, we're not in a war. Well, Ephesians says differently. Ephesians chapter 6, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities in the air. Yeah, but Peter, David is not here. Yeah, David called the King of Kings. The King of Kings is here. And he not only did he do it on the cross and sacrificed his own life, showed us what true bravery is. There's no love that can compare to the fact that Christ laid down his life for you and me. Nothing. Not David, not his faithfulness, nothing can compare to that. What is your name? What is your name in the spiritual realm? You know, when the demons in the book of Acts, when they confronted some people that try to do some religious act, they said, listen, Jesus, we know. Paul, we've heard of. Let me share with you, if you move with Jesus, if you walk with the King of Kings, if you walk with David's king, you're going to walk like David walked. You're going to become a giant slayer. But Piet, you don't know the giants here, but I know your God. Piet, you don't know the things that's confronting me. Yes, but Piet, there's nobody with me. There was nobody with David. Nobody. Sometimes you just have to stand alone. Sometimes when everybody's fleeing, and even your family, and even you're the one that said, listen, we've got to run. Look at what's happening in culture. Everything is getting darker. We can't stay, things are too bad. I want to encourage you to turn around and ask yourself, who does this place belong to? Is this house my house? Because if it is my house, it's God's house. Yeah, but the business where I work, that's not God's. I beg to differ. It cannot be God's. It's so young. You can't imagine the things that happen there. And it's like Joshua, going over the Jordan. God says, every place you put your foot, I will give to you. You see, there's no excuse that's going to hold up. It's not. But it's tough. If you learn one thing from David's life, please learn this. It was never easy. But wherever David went, God brought the victory. There was actually one time it was easy and then he messed up. But that we'll get to next week. I want to encourage you this morning. If you feel, man, he's a little bit, this morning even more vigorous than usual, calm down a little bit. I'm not here to calm down this morning. I'm here to tell you there's some Joseph Bakabeths being raised. There's some Eliasers being raised. I said, Peter, but do we need that? Oh, how we need that. How we need that in our time today. And I'll ask our musicians to join me upstage. How we need that men and women, the men and women of God, will say, thus far and no more. Afrikaans people, tot hier toe en nie verder. Thus far and no more. Martin Luther, staring his death in the face, said, here I stand. I can do no other. Paul said, when a prophecy was brought to him, said, Paul, you can't go. If you go, you'll die. Paul said, he said I should go. But you're going to die. Yeah, I know. You told me that already. When did he say that, Paul? Oh, you know, the day he called me, he said, while you're blind, go and wait. And I will send Ananias, and he will come and teach you how much you will suffer for my name. How bold. Paul blind, not knowing yet, but knowing God has a plan. David looking at Israel and saying, God, this kingdom has been ripped apart. People stole our stuff. God, I want to build you a house. No, David. Let me build the house. There might be a lot of things that you want to do for the Lord. No, this is not a very popular message. But can I say to you this morning, stop running around so much. Stop trying to build so many things. Stand before the King who is able to build. Find rest in the God who is able to do so much more than you can ever imagine. Our God is as faithful today. It's the same God. The only difference is this. We're not following a Jewish king around the hillside in battles. Scripture says we're walking in heavenly places, following the King of Kings, the highest authority, and nothing will take you out of his hand. Romans 8. Romans 16:19 says, be excellent in the good things. Be innocent of all the rest, all the evil stuff. And he says this, and the God of peace will soon crush Satan underneath your feet. Let me ask you, do you still believe that? Or has your giant's voice become too loud? Do you think only King David can slay giants? You've got to go sit down with Shammah. You've got to go spend some time with some Joseph of Bagabeth, sharing with you that the time is not done. God is not finished gaining victory over every battle, seizing back what the enemy stole from you, subduing what you thought you were subjected to.